Before we dive into this emotional roller coaster, take a second to hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss more heart-wrenching stories like this. I'll never forget the way my hands trembled as I held the pregnancy test in front of me. 2 pink lines stared back, bold and unyielding, like a verdict I wasn't ready to face. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it echoing in my ears. How do you tell someone something this big? Something that changes everything? It was late afternoon when I finally worked up the courage. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I stood there for a moment, watching him, the man I loved, the man I thought would always stand by me, and wondered if he'd still look at me the same way after I spoke. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice cracking under the weight of what I was about to say. He glanced up, eyebrows raised. "What's wrong?" I took a deep breath, clutching the small plastic stick behind my back. "I'm pregnant." For a split second, silence filled the room. Then his expression shifted. His eyes narrowed, his jaw tightened, and a coldness washed over his face that made my stomach churn. "Are you sure?" he asked, his tone sharp, almost accusatory. "Yes," I whispered, holding out the test. "It's yours." But instead of relief or joy, or even fear, he shot up from the couch, pacing the room like a caged animal. "How can I be sure?" he snapped, turning to face me. "You've been distant lately. You've been different." My mouth fell open, but no words came out. Different? Was he serious? "You think I cheated on you?" I managed to choke out, my voice trembling with disbelief. His silence was answer enough. "This is insane," I said, shaking my head. "How could you even think that? After everything we've been through." "Then prove it," he interrupted, his voice rising. "Take a DNA test. If it's mine, fine. But until then, don't expect me to believe anything you say." The room spun around me. His words hit like a punch to the gut, leaving me gasping for air. I wanted to scream, to cry, to shake some sense into him, but all I could do was stare at him, stunned into silence. When he stormed out moments later, slamming the door behind him, I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. For the first time, I realized how fragile trust really was, and how easily it could shatter. Hours passed, and he didn't come back. I sat alone in the dark, cradling the pregnancy test in my hands, wondering how things had gone so wrong so fast. And as I stared at the tiny plus sign glowing faintly in the dim light, one thought kept circling in my mind. If he doesn't trust me now, will he ever? Months passed and life moved forward, whether I wanted it to or not. The memory of that night lingered like a shadow, haunting every decision I made. I tried calling him after he left, but my messages went unanswered. His silence spoke louder than any words ever could. Eventually I stopped trying. Pregnancy wasn't easy, not just because of the physical changes, but because of the emotional weight I carried with me everywhere. Every kick from the baby inside me was a reminder of what I'd lost. The man who should have been there, holding my hand, sharing this journey with me. Instead, I faced it alone. That's when he came into my life. I met Daniel at work. A colleague who had always been kind, always offered a smile when I needed one most. He noticed the exhaustion in my eyes long before anyone else did, and he didn't shy away from asking if I was okay. At first, I brushed him off, too guarded to let anyone get close. But Daniel was persistent. Slowly, he became someone I could lean on without feeling like I was burdening them. One evening, after a particularly rough day, he walked me to my car. "You don't have to go through this alone," he said softly, his voice steady and warm. "Whatever you're carrying, whatever you've been through, it doesn't mean you deserve to face it by yourself." His words broke something open inside me. For the first time in months, I let myself cry in front of someone who wasn't paid to listen. And as strange as it sounds, that moment changed everything. Daniel stayed. Not just that night, but in the weeks and months that followed. He helped me set up the nursery, attended doctor's appointments with me when no one else would, and even held my hand during the ultrasound. It wasn't romantic, at least not at first, but it grew into something neither of us expected. By the time the baby arrived, Daniel had become more than just a friend. He asked me to marry him 6 months later, kneeling in the middle of our living room with tears in his eyes. I know we didn't start this story the way most people do, he said, taking my hands in his. But I want to finish it with you. Let me be the family you deserve. I said yes. But here's the thing about starting over. It doesn't erase the past. No matter how much I loved Daniel, and I truly did, there were nights when I lay awake wondering what might have been. What if he had believed me? What if things had gone differently? And then one ordinary Tuesday morning, the past came knocking. I found an envelope in the mailbox addressed to me. There was no return address, just my name scrawled across the front in handwriting I recognized immediately. My stomach dropped as I opened it, pulling out a single sheet of paper. It was the DNA test results. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. The baby was his, just as I'd said all along. Relief flooded through me, but it was bittersweet. Because now, standing here with proof in my hands, I realized something painful. Even if he knew the truth, it wouldn't change anything. I was already married to another man. As I stared at the paper, a question gnawed at me. What am I supposed to do with this now? The envelope felt heavier than it should have, its edges sharp against my fingertips as I held it in trembling hands. It wasn't just paper. It was a Pandora's box of emotions I'd spent months trying to bury. Relief warred with guilt, anger tangled with regret. What was I supposed to do with this? Show it to Daniel? Track down the man who doubted me and shove it in his face, or tuck it away somewhere no one would ever find it? For days I couldn't bring myself to make a decision. I carried the results around like a secret too dangerous to share, slipping them into drawers or hiding them under piles of clothes only to retrieve them hours later. Each time I looked at them, I saw his face, the way he'd accused me, the coldness in his eyes. And each time I felt that same ache in my chest, like a wound that refused to heal. But then late one night, I found myself staring at an old photo tucked inside a book on my shelf. It was us, me and him, smiling together on a beach trip years ago. We looked so happy, so carefree. Back then, I never imagined we'd end up here, torn apart by mistrust and pride. My fingers traced the edges of the picture, and for the first time I allowed myself to wonder, did he still think about me? Did he regret what happened between us? That thought terrified me, and yet it wouldn't leave me alone. By morning I'd made up my mind. I didn't owe him anything, not after the way he treated me, but part of me needed closure. If nothing else, I wanted to look him in the eye and tell him the truth to see if he'd changed at all. So I called the office where he worked, pretending to be a client just to get his schedule. Then I waited outside his building, clutching the DNA results in my bag like they were a lifeline. Standing there, I felt ridiculous. What was I even doing? This wasn't some dramatic K-drama plotline. This was real life. He probably didn't care anymore. How he might not even remember me. But still I stayed watching people come and go, hoping to catch a glimpse of him before losing my nerve. And then finally he appeared. He walked out of the glass doors with a briefcase in hand, dressed in a suit that fit him perfectly. For a moment I forgot how to breathe. He looked older, more polished, but unmistakably the same. His hair was shorter, his jawline sharper, but those eyes, they hadn't changed. They were the same ones that once lit up when he saw me, the same ones that turned cold when he accused me of betrayal. I stepped forward, my heart hammering wildly. "Hey," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He froze mid-step, his gaze locking onto mine. For a second, I thought he might ignore me, keep walking like I didn't exist. But instead he blinked, surprise flickering across his features. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone guarded. "I need to talk to you," I replied, gripping the strap of my bag tightly. "It's important." He hesitated, glancing around as if unsure whether this was a trap. Finally, he nodded toward a nearby cafe. "Let's go inside." As we walked side by side but worlds apart, I realized something terrifying. I had no idea what I was going to say. When we sat down at a small table in the corner, the air between us thick with unspoken words, I pulled the envelope from my bag. His eyes widened slightly, but he didn't ask questions, not yet. He said he watched me waiting. And suddenly I wasn't sure I could go through with it. "What's in the envelope?" he asked finally, breaking the silence. My throat tightened. "The truth," I whispered. But as I reached for it, my hand froze. What if telling him didn't fix anything? What if it only made things worse? The cafe was quiet. The kind of place where soft jazz played in the background and sunlight filtered through sheer curtains. It felt almost too intimate for the tension crackling between us. I sat across from him, clutching the envelope like it was a lifeline, or maybe a grenade about to explode. His hazel eyes studied me carefully, searching for something in my expression. "You said this is important," he began, his voice low and measured. "What's going on?" I swallowed hard, my blue eyes darting away from his intense gaze. My black hair fell forward, partially shielding my face as I hesitated. How could I explain everything without sounding bitter? Without letting him see how much his accusations still hurt? "I got the DNA test done," I finally admitted, sliding the envelope toward him. "For the baby." He froze, his fingers hovering over the envelope but not touching it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched so long that I thought he might refuse to take it, might walk away just like he did that night. But then slowly he reached out and opened it. His hazel eyes scanned the document, widening slightly as they landed on the results. When he looked up at me again, there was something unreadable in his expression. Shame? Regret? Relief? "It's mine," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "Yes," I replied, my own voice trembling. "It always was." He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his neatly styled brown hair. He looked older than I remembered, the lines around his mouth deeper, his jaw tighter. But those hazel eyes, they were the same ones that had once looked at me with such love, such trust. And now all I saw was guilt. "I'm sorry," he said after what felt like an eternity. "I shouldn't have doubted you. Not for a second." His apology hit me like a punch to the gut. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand why he hadn't trusted me when it mattered most. But another part, the tired, broken part, just wanted to let it go. What good would anger do now? The damage was done. "I don't know what to say," I admitted, fidgeting with the hem of my sweater. "You hurt me. You didn't believe in us, even though I needed you more than ever." "I know," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'll regret it for the rest of my life." We sat there in silence for a while, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on us. Finally, he broke it. "Are you happy?" he asked, his gaze piercing. "With him?" The question caught me off guard. Of course, he knew about Daniel. I'd seen the wedding announcement splashed across social media like everyone else. But hearing him ask directly made my stomach twist. "I am," I said softly, meeting his eyes. "Daniel's different. He believes in me. He trusts me." Something flickered in his hazel eyes. Pain, maybe envy, but he nodded. "I'm glad. You deserve someone who can give you that." His words stung more than I expected. Was he really okay with losing me? Or was he just pretending for my sake? Before I could respond, he added, "Do you ever think about us? About what we had?" My breath hitched. Did I? Of course I did. There were nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if things could have been different. Wondering if we could have been different. But saying it aloud felt dangerous, like opening a door I couldn't close again. "I try not to," I whispered, looking down at my hands. "It doesn't change anything." "No," he agreed, his tone heavy with regret. "But it doesn't mean I don't miss you." As I left the cafe, his words replayed in my mind over and over. "I miss you." They lingered like smoke, impossible to shake off. And as I climbed into my car, tears streaming down my face, I realized something terrifying. Maybe I missed him too. The drive home was a blur of tears and trembling hands. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, trying to focus on the road instead of the storm raging inside me. His words echoed in my mind, "I miss you." 3 simple words that shouldn't have meant anything, not after everything that had happened. And yet they clung to me like a shadow refusing to let go. When I walked through the door, Daniel was in the kitchen, humming softly as he chopped vegetables for dinner. The sight of him should have calmed me, his warm amber-brown eyes lighting up when he saw me, his easy smile that always made the world feel less heavy. But tonight, it only deepened the ache in my chest. How could I look at him and feel guilty? He'd given me nothing but love and support, and here I was, carrying secrets that didn't belong to him. "Hey," he said, wiping his hands on a towel and coming over to kiss my cheek. "How was your day?" "Fine," I lied, forcing a smile. My blue eyes darted away from his, unable to hold his gaze without feeling like I was betraying him. "Just tired." He frowned slightly, tilting my chin so I'd face him. "You sure? You seem distant." "I'm fine," I repeated, pulling back gently. "Really, just need some rest." He studied me for a moment longer, his brow furrowed with concern, but eventually nodded. "Let me know if you need anything." As he returned to cooking, I slipped into the living room and sank onto the couch, clutching my knees to my chest. The house felt suffocating all of a sudden, its walls closing in on me. Every photo of us together, the wedding portraits, the ultrasound pictures, the candid shots of laughter and joy, felt like accusations. Who was I to sit here, pretending everything was perfect while carrying pieces of another life? That night, as Daniel slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, replaying every detail of my meeting with him. His hazel eyes filled with regret. His voice cracking when he apologized. The way he looked at me like I was still his even though I wasn't. Not anymore. It was maddening, this pull I felt toward someone who had hurt me so deeply. Wasn't I supposed to be over him by now? Hadn't I moved on? But the truth was harder to swallow. I hadn't moved on. Not completely. There were cracks in my present. Fissures I'd ignored because facing them would mean admitting I wasn't as healed as I wanted to believe. The next morning, I woke up before Daniel, slipping out of bed quietly. I needed airspace to think. As I stepped outside, the cool breeze brushed against my face, tugging at strands of my black hair. I wandered aimlessly until I found myself standing in front of the park where he and I used to walk together. The memories came flooding back, the sound of his laugh, the warmth of his hand in mine, the way he teased me about tripping over tree roots. And then, like a punch to the gut, reality hit me. I couldn't keep doing this. Living in the past, holding on to what-ifs wasn't fair to Daniel, to myself, or even to him. But letting go felt impossible, like severing a limb I didn't realize I still depended on. As I stood there, tears streaming down my face, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "You okay? Who is Daniel?" You must have noticed I was gone and followed me. His amber-brown eyes softened with worry as he approached, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "Talk to me," he urged gently. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." For a split second, I considered telling him everything. The meeting, the DNA test, the lingering feelings I couldn't shake. But the words caught in my throat, tangled in fear and guilt. Instead, I buried my face in his chest and cried, clinging to him like he was the only thing keeping me grounded. Later that night, as I lay awake listening to Daniel's steady breathing, I realized something terrifying. I didn't know how to fix this. Not without breaking something, or someone, in the process. The days that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and stolen moments. I tried to act normal around Daniel, smiling when he told jokes, nodding along during conversations about our future plans. But inside I was unraveling, piece by fragile piece. Every glance at the envelope tucked away in my nightstand drawer felt like a betrayal. Every memory of him whispered in the back of my mind, taunting me with what could have been. Daniel noticed. Of course he did, he always noticed. His amber-brown eyes would linger on me during meals, searching for something beneath my forced smiles. "You've been different lately," he said one evening as we sat together on the couch. The baby cooed softly in her bassinet nearby, blissfully unaware of the tension hanging heavy in the air. "I'm just tired," I lied again, avoiding his gaze. My blue eyes flickered toward the baby instead, using her as an excuse. New moms don't exactly get much sleep. He didn't push it, at least not right away, but I could see the doubt creeping into his expression. He trusted me completely, and knowing that made my guilt even worse. How could I sit here pretending everything was fine while hiding something so monumental? Then one fateful afternoon, everything changed. I'd gone out to run errands, leaving Daniel home with the baby. When I returned, he was sitting at the kitchen table, his face pale and his hands gripping a piece of paper. The DNA test results. My heart stopped as I froze in the doorway, my black hair falling forward to partially shield my horrified expression. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low but trembling with emotion. His amber-brown eyes locked onto mine, filled with confusion and hurt. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mind raced, trying to come up with an explanation, any explanation, but nothing came. All I could do was stand there, mute and exposed. "Did you think I wouldn't find it?" he pressed, holding up the paper. "Or were you planning to keep this from me forever?" "No." I finally managed to choke out, stepping closer. "I wasn't sure what to do with it. I didn't know how to tell you." "Tell me what?" he demanded, standing now. His voice rose slightly, cracking under the weight of his emotions. "That the man who accused you of cheating is the father of your child? That you met him behind my back? What exactly am I supposed to make of this?" "It's not like that," I cried, tears streaming down my face. "I only met him to give him the results. To prove I wasn't lying, to prove he was wrong. I never meant for it to be anything more." "But it is more, isn't it?" he shot back, his tone sharp. "You've been distant, distracted. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I wouldn't wonder if you still had feelings for him?" His words hit me like a slap, forcing me to confront the truth I'd been avoiding. Yes, I'd thought about him. Yes, meeting him stirred up emotions I didn't want to feel. But that didn't mean I wanted to leave Daniel. It didn't mean I didn't love him. "I'm sorry," I whispered, sinking into a chair. "I never wanted to hurt you. You've done nothing but support me, and I repaid you with lies and secrets. I hate myself for that." He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw clenched tightly. Then without another word, he turned and walked out the door, leaving me alone with the deafening silence. As I sat there, clutching the edge of the table, I realized I might have just lost the best thing that ever happened to me. The hours after Daniel left stretched endlessly, each minute heavier than the last. I sat at the kitchen table long after he walked out, staring blankly at the empty space where he'd stood. The DNA test results lay crumpled on the floor, discarded in the heat of our argument. My blue eyes burned from crying. But no amount of tears could wash away the guilt or the fear clawing at my chest. What had I done? I replayed the fight over and over in my mind. His voice trembling with hurt, his amber-brown eyes filled with betrayal. He'd trusted me completely, given me everything, and I'd thrown it all away with secrets I couldn't bring myself to share. Was this how it ended? Had I ruined the one good thing I had left? When night fell, I finally forced myself to move. The baby stirred in her crib, her soft whimpers pulling me back to reality. She needed me, even if Daniel didn't anymore. As I picked her up and held her close, her tiny fingers curling around mine, a fresh wave of sobs shook me. How could I face her knowing I might have shattered her family before she even understood what that meant? I called Daniel's phone repeatedly, but he didn't answer. Texts went unread, voicemails unheard. By morning, panic set in. Where was he? Was he coming back? Or had I driven him away for good? Desperation pushed me to act. I drove to his office first, then to his favorite coffee shop, anywhere I thought he might be. But no one had seen him. Finally, I ended up at the park, the same one where I'd broken down weeks earlier, and found him sitting alone on a bench, staring out at the lake. "Daniel," I said softly, approaching cautiously. My black hair whipped around my face in the wind, but I barely noticed. All I could focus on was him. He glanced up, his expression guarded. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then quietly he said, "I needed some time to think." "I'm so sorry," I blurted out, kneeling in front of him. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I took his hands in mine. "I never wanted to hurt you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I threw it all away because I was too scared to tell you the truth." His amber-brown eyes searched mine, looking for something, forgiveness, maybe, or reassurance. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, his voice raw. "About the meeting, about everything?" "I was afraid," I admitted, my voice breaking. "Afraid you'd see me differently, that you'd doubt me like he did. And when I saw how happy we were together, I convinced myself it didn't matter, that keeping it hidden wouldn't change anything." "But it did," he said firmly, pulling his hands away. "It changed us. Trust isn't something you can take for granted, not in a marriage. Not after everything we've built. His words cut deep, but they were true. I'd been selfish, thinking I could protect our relationship by hiding the truth. He said I'd poisoned it. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this, I promised, reaching for his hand again. Whatever you need. Just please don't give up on us. For a long moment he didn't respond. Then slowly he nodded. We'll talk about it later. Right now I need some space. As I watched him walk away again, I realized something painful. Even if he forgave me, things would never be the same. The days that followed were a fragile dance of uncertainty. Daniel came home eventually, but the warmth between us had shifted into something colder, more cautious. His amber-brown eyes no longer lit up when he looked at me. Instead, they carried a guarded distance that made my heart ache. We tiptoed around each other, speaking only when necessary, avoiding topics that might reignite the pain we both felt. Meanwhile, he, the man who had once been my entire world, reached out again. A text message appeared on my phone one evening. Can we meet? Just to talk. I stared at the screen, my blue eyes wide with conflict. What could possibly come from meeting him now? Hadn't I caused enough damage already? But part of me, the broken, reckless part, wanted answers, needed closure. So against every rational instinct screaming in my head, I agreed. We met at the same cafe where we'd confronted the DNA results. This time, though, the atmosphere was heavier, charged with unspoken tension. He sat across from me, his hazel eyes filled with an intensity that made my breath hitch. You look exhausted, he said softly, his voice tinged with concern. I am, I admitted, twisting a strand of my black hair nervously. Everything's falling apart. Because of me? He asked, leaning forward slightly. No, I replied quickly, shaking my head. Yes, maybe. I don't know anymore. He sighed, running a hand through his dark brown hair. I never meant to hurt you. That night when I accused you, it was the biggest mistake of my life. And seeing you with him, it kills me to know I lost you because of my own stupidity. His words stirred something deep inside me, a longing I'd tried so hard to bury. For a moment, I let myself imagine what life might have been like if things had gone differently, if he'd believed me, if we'd stayed together. Would we be happy now? Or would the cracks in our relationship have widened over time? But then reality crashed back down. I wasn't living in a world of what-ifs. I was married to Daniel, carrying pieces of two lives that couldn't coexist. You can't say these things to me, I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. It's not fair to either of us. I know, he said, his voice breaking. But I can't pretend I don't still care about you. I can't act like losing you didn't destroy me. His confession hit me like a tidal wave, pulling me under emotions I wasn't ready to face. My hands trembled as I stood, grabbing my bag. I have to go, I said, my voice barely audible. This isn't helping anyone. As I rushed out of the cafe, I realized too late that Daniel was standing outside waiting for me. His amber-brown eyes widened in shock as he took in my tear-streaked face, then narrowed as they landed on him sitting alone inside. What are you doing here? Daniel demanded, his tone sharp and accusing. It's not what it looks like, I stammered, panic rising in my chest. I swear I just... Save it, he snapped, cutting me off. I gave you another chance, and this is how you repay me? No, I cried, reaching for him. Please, let me explain. But he pulled away, shaking his head. I can't do this anymore. As I watched him walk away for the second time, I collapsed onto the sidewalk, sobbing uncontrollably. I'd fought so hard to hold everything together, but now it felt like I was losing everything all at once. The days that followed Daniel's departure were a haze of despair. I tried calling him, texting him, even showing up at his office, but he refused to see me. Each rejection felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. My blue eyes, once bright and hopeful, now reflected nothing but exhaustion and guilt. I was drowning, and no matter how hard I fought, I couldn't find my way back to the surface. And then just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. It started with a phone call from Daniel's lawyer. His voice was cold and professional as he informed me that Daniel had filed for separation. He needs time to process everything, the lawyer explained, though his tone suggested there would be no reconciliation. He asked me to handle the legal proceedings. I dropped the phone, my knees buckling beneath me. Separation. The word echoed in my mind, hollow and final. How had it come to this? How had my choices torn apart the life I'd worked so hard to build? But the betrayal didn't stop there. A few days later, he, the man who had haunted my thoughts for months, showed up at my doorstep. His hazel eyes were filled with determination as he stepped inside without invitation. "We need to talk," he said firmly. "There's nothing left to say," I replied, crossing my arms over my chest. My black hair hung loose around my face, framing the weariness etched into my features. "You've already done enough damage." "I'm not here to hurt you," he insisted, his voice softening. "I'm here because I care about you, because I can't stand by and watch you lose everything." "What do you mean?" I asked, suspicion creeping into my tone. He hesitated, then pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "I contacted Daniel," he admitted, handing it to me. "I told him about our meeting, the DNA test, everything. I thought, maybe if he understood why I reached out, he'd forgive you." My heart sank as I read the note. It wasn't just an explanation. It was a confession, a detailed account of our history, his regret, and his lingering feelings for me. My hands trembled as I looked up at him, anger bubbling to the surface. "How could you do this?" I demanded, my voice rising. "This isn't your decision to make." "I was trying to help," he shot back, frustration flashing in his hazel eyes. "You're miserable and so is he. Maybe if he knew the truth." "The truth doesn't fix anything," I shouted, tears streaming down my face. "Don't you get it? Every time you insert yourself into my life, you ruin it. First you accused me of cheating. Then you showed up when I was finally moving on. And now this, you've destroyed any chance I had of saving my marriage." His expression crumbled, guilt washing over him. "I didn't mean to." "Get out," I interrupted, pointing toward the door. "Just leave. Please." For a moment he stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for words. But ultimately he nodded and walked away, leaving me alone in the wreckage of my life. That night, as I sat on the floor of my empty living room, surrounded by boxes half-packed for a future I didn't want, I realized something devastating. No matter what I did next, I'd already lost everything. The days turned into weeks and I found myself living in a strange limbo. My house felt emptier than ever, the silence pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't escape. The baby was my only constant. Her tiny giggles and curious blue eyes reminding me that life still moved forward even when I felt stuck. But raising her alone wasn't what I'd imagined. Every diaper change, every lullaby sung in the dark, came with a pang of longing for the family we could have been. I spent hours replaying every decision, every moment that had led me here. What if I'd handled things differently? What if I'd told Daniel about the DNA test sooner? What if I'd never met him again? The questions swirled endlessly, but they always circled back to one truth. I couldn't change the past. All I could do was learn from it and try to rebuild what was left. One afternoon, as I pushed the stroller through the park, I ran into someone unexpected. Sarah, an old friend I hadn't seen since before the pregnancy. Her warm smile lit up her face as she approached, her blonde hair catching the sunlight. "Oh my gosh, look at you," she exclaimed, bending down to coo at the baby. "She's adorable." "Thanks," I said softly, forcing a small smile. It was hard to feel proud of anything these days, but seeing someone else admire my daughter gave me a flicker of joy. Sarah straightened, studying me with concern. "How are you doing, though? Honestly." Her question caught me off guard. For a moment, I considered brushing it off with a generic, "I'm fine." But something in her tone, the genuine care in her voice, made me pause. Instead, I sighed and shook my head. "Not great," I admitted. "Things fell apart big time." We sat down on a nearby bench, and for the first time in months, I opened up. I told her everything, the accusation, the DNA test, the meeting with him, the fight with Daniel and the lawyer's call. As I spoke, tears streamed down my face, but there was also relief in finally sharing the burden. Sarah listened quietly, her green eyes filled with empathy. When I finished, she placed a hand on mine. "You've been carrying so much guilt," she said gently. "But blaming yourself isn't going to fix anything. You made mistakes, sure, but don't let them define you. You're stronger than this." Her words struck a chord deep within me. She was right. I'd been punishing myself relentlessly, replaying every misstep until it consumed me. But maybe it was time to stop running from the pain and start facing it head on. That night, I wrote 2 letters. The first was to Daniel. It wasn't an apology, that ship had sailed, but rather an acknowledgement of everything we'd shared and everything I'd broken. "I'll always love you," I wrote, my handwriting shaky but sincere. "And I hope someday you can forgive me even if we can't go back to how things were." The second letter was to him. Short and direct, it said simply, "Thank you for caring enough to reach out. But I need to move on for real this time. Please respect that." Sealing both envelopes, I dropped them in the mailbox the next morning. Sending them felt like releasing weights I'd carried for far too long. Well, but it was a start. As I walked home, the autumn leaves crunching beneath my boots, I realized something important. Healing wasn't about forgetting, it was about learning to live with the scars. Months passed and life began to take on a new rhythm. The days weren't easy, there were still sleepless nights filled with tears. Moments when the weight of everything I'd lost felt unbearable, but they weren't as suffocating as before. Slowly, I started finding pieces of myself again. The woman who loved sunsets, who laughed at silly jokes, who dreamed of something more than just survival. The baby grew too, her giggles becoming louder, her curiosity insatiable. Watching her explore the world reminded me how much beauty there was in beginnings, even messy, imperfect ones. She became my anchor, pulling me back to the present whenever guilt or regret threatened to drag me under. And then one crisp spring morning, the unexpected happened. I was folding laundry when I heard a knock at the door. My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't often I had visitors these days. Finning it, I froze. Standing on my porch was Daniel, his amber-brown eyes softer than I'd seen them in months. His light chestnut hair was tousled slightly by the breeze, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice hesitant but steady. I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. We sat across from each other in the living room, the air thick with unspoken words. Finally, he broke the silence. "I got your letter," he said, holding up the envelope I'd sent all those months ago. "It meant a lot." "I meant every word," I replied, my blue eyes searching his face. "I know I hurt you, and I don't expect forgiveness, I just wanted you to know how sorry I am." He nodded slowly, his gaze dropping to his hands. "I've thought about what you wrote a lot. About us. About everything." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I won't lie, it's been hard. Trust doesn't come easily once it's broken. But I miss you. I miss us." Tears welled up in my eyes, spilling over before I could stop them. "I miss you too," I whispered, clutching the edge of the couch. "More than you'll ever know." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then quietly he added, "I'm not saying things can go back to how they were. Too much has happened for that. But maybe we can try again. One step at a time." His words hit me like a lifeline thrown into stormy waters. I wanted to say yes immediately, to throw myself into his arms and promise never to let him go. But I knew better now. Love wasn't about grand gestures or quick fixes, it was about patience, honesty, and work. "I want that," I said finally, my voice trembling. "But only if you're sure. Only if we both are." He smiled faintly, reaching out to take my hand. His touch was tentative, almost shy, but it carried the weight of hope. "We'll figure it out together," he promised. "No secrets this time." As we sat there, holding hands and talking late into the night, I realized something profound. Second chances aren't given, they're earned, and I intended to spend the rest of my life proving I deserved this one. The months that followed were a delicate balancing act. Daniel and I didn't rush into anything. We took our time rebuilding trust brick by brick. Some days were easier than others. There were moments when old wounds resurfaced, when a careless word or lingering glance brought back the ache of everything we'd lost. But through it all, we held on to one truth. We both wanted this. We both wanted us. Our conversations became deeper, more honest. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, he turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if things had gone differently?" He asked softly. I hesitated, my blue eyes meeting his amber-brown ones. It was a question I'd asked myself countless times, but answering it felt risky, like opening a door we'd worked so hard to close. Finally, I nodded. Sometimes I admit it, but then I think, maybe this is exactly where we're supposed to be. Maybe all of it, the pain, the mistakes, it led us here, to something stronger. He smiled, squeezing my hand. I like that answer. Life wasn't perfect, not by any means. The scars of the past still lingered, faint reminders of the lessons we'd learned. But they no longer defined us. Instead, they shaped us into people who understood the value of forgiveness, of second chances, of choosing each other every single day. One afternoon, as I watched the baby play in the backyard, her laughter ringing out like music, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. She was growing up in a world full of love, not without its challenges, but rich with hope. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful too. Later that evening, as Daniel and I tucked her into bed, she reached out to grab both our hands, pulling them together. Her tiny fingers wrapped around ours, binding us in a way words never could. In that moment, I realized something beautiful. Love isn't about perfection. It's about resilience. It's messy, painful, and unpredictable. But it's also worth fighting for. As I kissed her goodnight and turned off the light, I glanced at Daniel. His amber-brown eyes caught mine, warm and steady. "We'll make it work," he said quietly, reading my thoughts. "Whatever it takes." "I believe you," I replied, smiling through tears, "because we already have." In the quiet moments that followed as I stood in the doorway watching them sleep, I reflected on everything I'd been through. The heartbreak, the guilt, the choices that tore me apart, and the ones that put me back together. Love had tested me in ways I never imagined, but it had also taught me the most important lesson of all. Even after everything falls apart, you can start again. You just have to be brave enough to take the first step. And as I closed the door behind me, stepping into the soft glow of the hallway, I knew I was ready to face whatever came next, with an open heart and a soul finally at peace.